With the help of Hashem, we are learning Rosh Hashana Daf Chav Hey. We left off on Daf Chav Dalid, Amid Beis, all the way in the bottom of the Amid, beginning with the Mishnah. In the Mishnah, we're going to learn about specific cases where Rabbi Yeshua argued with Rabban Gamliel, who was the head of the Sanhedrin, about which day should be Rosh Chodesh. In the case of the Mishnah, it was about which day should be Rosh Hashana, which means that they had a machloikes pashat, what day you have to fast on Yom Kippur. And we'll see the greatness of Rabbi Yeshua, that he ultimately was subservient to the psak of Rabban Gamliel, making sure that there isn't a machloikes amongst the Jewish people as to which day is Rosh Chodesh. We will also see from this sugya one of the sources why we declare during Kiddush Levana, David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim, connected to that which was declared regarding Kiddush HaChodesh. And that's going to teach us also about the greatness of each Beis Din, regardless of their relative stature compared to other Batei Dinim. As the Gemara will tell us, as we'll learn today, that Yiftach B'Doiroi has to be treated Kishmuel B'Doiroi. And we're going to start today the third Perek, which begins continuing the same sugya of Kiddush HaChodesh. We're going to learn that the 30th day can only be declared day number one. The 30th day can only be declared Rosh Chodesh if that declaration, Mekudesh, as we learned in the last year, is made during the day. If the deliberations begins during the day, but the Beis Din did not have a chance to actually finalize and declare today Rosh Chodesh until it became night, they no longer may do that, and the month becomes a full month. We're going to learn that even though when it comes to monetary laws, there is a rule that a Yachid Mumcha, which means a widely recognized expert, is allowed to adjudicate alone. When it comes to the sanctification of the new month, it must be done dafka by a Beis Din and many other more gewaldige concepts and dinim and sugyos. And let us begin again on Daf Chav Dalid Amid Beis by the Mishnah. Okay, says the Mishnah, said once happened, Shabo Shnayim, that two witnesses came, the Amru, and they tell the Beis Din that Ro'inuhu Shachris b'Mizrach, there is a huge machloikis Rishonim. How to understand this line? We will learn it. We're learning Gemara here, Mishnah Rashi, but being that we proudly learn Rambam, the Rambam in Kiddush HaChodesh Perek Beis, who quotes this story, learns it also like Rashi, which will make a huge difference as to how other Rishonim learn the Mishnah, as we'll explain in a moment. So Rashi says that they saw the old moon in the morning. And as we already spoke out, that even though when it comes to the new moon, to the new Chodesh, the moon will always be to the east of the sun. When it comes to the second half of the month, and even more so towards the end of the month, then it's going to be the other way around, that the moon is always to the west of the sun, which means that when it comes to sunrise and moonrise, towards the end of the month, they are also one near the other. They happen one right after the other. It's always moonrise first, that's by the end of the month, and then sunrise, which is why you will see the end of the moon, the end of the month, the little sliver of the old moon, dafka right before sunrise, because the moon just came up. However, it's not sunrise, so the light of the sun doesn't, so to say, blind us to the relatively little light of the moon. We also learned on Daf Chaf Amid Beis that the way Hashem made us, no matter on what part of the world you are, from when the moon, the old moon disappears, until when the new moon will reappear to the naked eye, you have to wait 24 hours, whether it's 18:6, whether it's 6:18. So when they saw the old moon in the morning, this morning is the 30th day in the morning, day 30. So l'chayra, that month is going to be a full month, because to see the new moon, it's only going to happen on day 31. However, Daf Chafei, whether it was the same Eidim, it sounds like it was the same Eidim, but the same will be if other Eidim came, and they say that the new moon was seen Arvis. Arvis means that right before the end of the day, right after sunset, as it is in the new moon, that you see the new moon in the western horizon, mamish, after sunset, they saw the new moon. In other words, there's witnesses that are basically saying that the amount of time that the moon disappeared was only of 12 hours. But you had Eidim. But it can't be. So therefore, Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, Eidi Shekerheim. Not Shaykh. Again, we learned that on Daf Chaf Amid Beis. That's one of the klalim, the few rules that we have quoted from the series of Braisa that's called Soit HaIbur, is in that sugya we had this rule. However, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri was not the head of the Sanhedrin. They went to Yavna. Yavna then was the seat of the Sanhedrin. And by the way, Tzvika, that's what you asked, remember the Kohanim. You see over here that even before the Eidim came to the Sanhedrin, they would go to their local Beis Din just to share what they saw, and they would normally follow the local Beis Din. Here, even though the local Beis Din, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri told them, this is not good, this was the same group, they're lying. They knew they're not lying. They went to Yavna and Kibla Rabban Gamliel. He accepted them. And he made the 30th day into day number 1. He made the previous month into a chodesh chaser, into a deficient month. Now we're going to have to explain how can he do that. We'll get to the Gemara in a moment. Another story, second story in the Mishnah. There was another occasion that two witnesses came. And they said that we saw the new moon. Bismanoi means on the 30th day. I just want to reiterate that the 30th day can mean two things. It can mean they saw it the night going into the 30th day, which is probably the normal case. They see it the night prior. They come to the Beis Din during the following day. They testify, and Beis Din declares that day Rosh Chodesh. Just to know that there is also a possibility that they didn't see it the night going into the 30th, but they see it towards the end of the 30th. And if they are seeing it mamish near the Sanhedrin, and if they have enough time to testify and Beis Din to interrogate, and that can happen in a few minutes, if they know that that's Taka the new moon, just to know it's shaykh for them to see it towards the end of the 30th. But as long as the Beis Din will declare on that day that it's Rosh Chodesh, then that day also becomes day number 1. Be that as it may, they witnesses saw it. They saw the new moon. However, ubeleil iburay lo nirem. But on the following night, it was not seen. Now, if the new moon was seen last night, then it certainly should have been seen tonight. Or let me say better, just technically what happened. They saw it the night going into the 30th. They came to the Beis Din late. But when they came to the Beis Din, it was already at the end of the 30th day. If the new moon already appeared last night, then today, towards the end of the day, it should appear even earlier before sunset. Everyone should have been seeing it now. The sky had no clouds. No one saw the new moon. So the Mitzias of today was Keilu proving that what they saw last night was not true. And that doesn't mean that they deliberately lied. It means maybe like we learned, they saw a cloud that had a form of a crescent, and they confused it with the moon. But the evidence was that if there's no new moon right now, it could not be that the new moon already appeared last night. Like we mentioned, every day the moon is outrunning the sun by around 12 degrees. So whenever it was seen last night, tonight it should be seen even earlier and even larger. Yet, now this story happened to be in the case, just to make it clear, that the Eidim saw it in the night of the 30th of Elul. And based on their testimony, the 30th of Elul, like it happened in the majority of the years, did not remain the 30th. It became day number 1. Elul was Chaser. Rosh Hashana began earlier. Just understand. So Yom Kippur would be earlier. But the Olam was telling Rabbi Gamliel that you cannot rely on them. There was no witnesses. You cannot be Mekadosh the Chodesh. Now, Amar Abdoi ben Hurkin is regarding Rabbi Gamliel's acceptance. Hey, they sheker. And he gave a Gavaldic example. Imagine 2 people testified that a woman just gave birth. And the next day, people see the woman, and Keresa ben Shinel, her belly is between her teeth, which means she's very, very pregnant. People will know that she's still pregnant now. If she's still pregnant now, it can't be she gave birth yesterday. In other words, if the new moon is not appearing today at the end of the 30th day, no way it already appeared last night. Okay. Omar Loi, Rabbi Yeshua, who heard the statement of Rabbi Doisa, tells Rabbi Doisa, Roya Ani es Devoracha. that you're right. I'm going to agree with you. Yesterday, the 30th should not become day number 1. The 30th should be made the 30th. Rosh Chodesh, in our case, Rosh Hashana will begin a day later. I appreciate that means according to Rabbi Yeshua now siding with Rav Doisa, Yom Kippur will also be a day later. Or to word it differently, on the 11th of Tishrei, L'Rabban Gamliel, it was the 10th of Tishrei, L'Rabbi Yeshua. Now, Chevra, for those of us, not that long ago, when we learned the Sugya and Brachas, Daf Chav Zayin, Daf Chav Ches, when there was a machloikis between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua regarding Tefillas Arvis, Rishus or Chayva, that story did not have such a happy ending. And l'chayra, this story is the tikkun of what happened then. So first of all, Rabbi Yeshua argued. Not only that, Shalach loy Rabban Gamliel. When Gamliel heard that Abdoisa ben Hurkin okay, he had a question in theory. Rabbi Yeshua was different. He felt that Rabbi Yeshua is going to actually establish another day for Rosh Chodesh. So Rabban Gamliel said, Goizrani yoylecha, I'm decreeing on you. Shatavi etzli, that you should come to me. He should come to me b'makelcha, with your walking stick, carrying your walking stick. He didn't need a walking stick. For him, it was mamash tza'ah. Ub'ma'oisecha, and carrying your money on Yom Kippur, according to you. The Yom Kippur shechaliyah is b'cheshbeinecha, which, like we mentioned, the 11th of Tishrei l'Rabban Gamliel was the 10th of Tishrei l'Rabbi Yeshua. Now he hears such a gezerah, he felt very disturbed. Halach, so Rabbi Yeshua went, umatzoi Rabbi Akiva meitzaloi. We'll see clear, Rabbi Akiva found Rabbi Yeshua that was very distressed. Amaloi, so says Rabbi Akiva to Rabbi Yeshua, Yeshli lilmoid, I will teach you, Shakol Masha Asa Rabban Gamliel Asoi, even though Bisvara, you're right. I would have agreed with you, but it doesn't make a difference. You can easily, with a good conscience, follow his gezerah, because it says, and he's quoting the pasuk in Emor, Eilu Mayadei Hashem Mikra Kodesh Asher Tikrou Oisam, that you shall declare. And Chazal teach us, Ben Bizmanom, Ben Shaloi Bizmanom, regardless if they declared it appropriately or not. And Amy, that God says, Eli Moyadas Ella Elu, I will follow Yom Tov the way the Beis Din Shalmata made such a declaration. So therefore, no problem, follow Rabbi Gamliel, and you're not going to be violating your Yom Kippur. Not only that, Rabbi Yeshua also went to Rabbi Doisa, who argued with Rabbi Gamliel, Amaloi, and Rabbi Doisa tells Rabbi Yeshua, listen, in theory we can debate, but in practice, you have to accept what he says. Because in Bo'un, Anu, Ladun, Achar, Beis Din, Shal Rabbi Gamliel, in other words, if we're going to start reconsidering their decisions, in our case, his decision, then Srichin, Amul, Ladun, Achar, Kol Beis Din, O Beis Din. Sh'aman mi ma'is Moshe v'ad Achshav. Then we can go back and you can start reconsidering all of the Piskei Dinim of all of the Batei Dinim. And I'll prove it to you that we may not do so. Shenever, as it says, and we're quoting a pasuk at the end of Mishpatim, Vayal Moshe v'Aharon Nadav and Avihu v'Shivim Ziknei Yisrael. This is the Sinai experience, and the Torah mentions some of them by name. The Torah Dafke does not mention the names of the 70 elders. You know, we're learning now the beginning of the cycle of Chumash, and we have what at the end of Bereshis, at the end of Noach, and then we have again with the children of Rabbi Yishmael. The Torah mentions names. Why didn't the Torah mention the names of the 70 elders? And the answer is because if we would know their names, then later we would say that none of our Dayanim are like them, because we would know their names, we would know who they are, and we would say, okay, they're not as great, we can argue with them. The Torah purposefully obscured their names. Doesn't matter who they were. If they were appointed by Hashgacha Pratis to be from the Shivim Zakenim, we got to follow their ruling. Ella Lilmoid, or Lalamed, more, but it's to teach us. Shakol Shloisha v'Shloisha Sha'amdu Beis Din Al Yisrael. If 3 are a Beis Din, Harei Hu Ke Beis Din Oishel Moshe. In other words, they become the authority. So even though Rabbi Doisa himself argued with Rabbi Gamliel, in theory, he told Rabbi Yeshua, listen to Rabbi Gamliel. And indeed, and that's the tikkun of the story. Not a makloy. I want to say something else, that even in brachas, Rabbi Yeshua also had big derecheretz, if you remember the story. Rabbi Yeshua did not publicly argue with Rabbi Gamliel. Fakert, he thought that to make the peace, Did anyone here say that Tefillas Arvis, remember that, was Chayva, was Rishus? Rabbi Yeshua was silent. Here they argued. Rabbi Yeshua owned his position. But then when it came to the practice, Rabbi Yeshua took his walking stick and he took his money and he went to Yavne to Rabbi Gamliel. It was the 10th Rabbi Gamliel. Theoretically, it was the 10th. Theoretically, the 10th of Rabbi Yeshua, but it was the 11th based on the ruling, right? Because he took in Rosh Chodesh a day earlier, so it was already the 11th. And when Rabbi Gamliel
did it only after the advice of Rabbi Dosa and Rabbi Akiva.
Yes, because Yom Kippur is the biggest thing. Like, wow, he was being told to do these God-fearing. Tanoim, Amad Rabbi Gamliel, V'noshka Yal Roshei. In other words, guys, I want to say something that for this piece is very important, but to be Mechalel Yom Tiv, God forbid, he understood the dilemma. He needed to have here that Al Pidin, even though Rabbi Yeshua knew he's right, but Al Pidin, it doesn't make a difference. They ruled Rosh Chodesh, that's Rosh Chodesh. Amad Rabbi Gamliel, Unashaka Yal Roshi, and he kissed him on his head. And Amar Loi, and he told Rabbi Yeshua, Boy B'Sholem. And he called him, you are my Rebbe and you are my student. Rebbe B'Chachma, you are my master in wisdom. This is what Rabbi Gamliel told Rabbi Yeshua. But V'Talmidai, but you are behaving like my student, like my disciple. Meaning, Shekibalt as Devarai, because you accepted my decree. Okay, now let's go to the first case of the Mishnah. Again, we're learning the Mishnah the way Rashi learns it, the way that Rambam learns it, that the old moon was seen in the morning. The old moon was seen in the morning. We learned the rule that from the sightings of the old moon until the reappearance and the sightings of the new moon, you got to wait 24 hours. The old moon was seen in the morning. 12 hours later, they saw the new moon. And Rabbi Yechon the Nuri says that they're liars. Rabban Gamliel accepted them. So Tanya Amal Lohem Rabban Gamliel Lechachamim. Right? I'll tell you something. This is my Kabbalah. This is what I learned from my teacher, from my father, from his father, going back. This is going back to Hillel. This is going back to Moshe Rabbeinu. This is going back to God. That that sometimes the moon travels a longer route, sometimes it travels a shorter route. Now let me explain. Again, there's so many ways of learning this Gemara. This line is discussed in Rambam Kiddush HaChodesh Perek Yud Zayin. For those of us who even learned a little bit of Kiddush HaChodesh, let me just say Bekitzit, that the moon, even though we keep on repeating that the cycle of the moon is 29, 12, 793, from one moilad, from one conjuncture to the other. That is the average movement. The real truth is that the moon is really affected by 4 different movements, not one like the sun. You have Galgalim in the Galgal, that the moon is going around. And it's not exact 29, 12, and 793. Sometimes the cycle takes a little bit longer, and sometimes it takes a little bit shorter, even though Rabbi Gamliel himself in a few lines will speak about the 29, 12, 793. How is that shaykh over here? So the way we have to learn the Gemara, the way that Rambam understood the Gemara, is that there are 2 things going on at the same time. We have to separate them. Number one, witnesses said that they saw the old moon. Witnesses says, and these witnesses said that they saw the new moon. Before Beis Din heard from the witnesses, they make their own cheshbon. They follow the rules of astronomy, all coming from Moshe Rabbeinu, and they know if the moon could have been seen. In our case, the new moon, if you were to say that it takes for a cycle 29, 12, 793, then at the moments that the Edom said that they saw the moon before Shkia, at that moment, it was not Shayach according to them. Rabbi Gamliel didn't only know what we call the Mahalach Emtsoi, which means the average cycle. He knew the Mahalach Hamiti. He knew the precise cycle. Now, it's only a very small difference. But in this case, that was all the difference. So Rabbi Gamliel knew that the moon could have been seen. It was by the border. They must have seen it mamish then, not a moment earlier, but it was shaykh for it to be seen. Now the Chachamim argued, this is important, Rabbi Yechon and the Nuri that said Eidei Shekerhem, really Eidei Shekerhem, not because people saw the moon, the old moon in the morning. For that, everyone agrees. And listen to this word, that Rambam spells it out in Perek Beis. When 2 people come to Beis Din and they testify regarding something that Beis Din never asked, and it's not Negei la halacha, even though people testified regarding it, you can discount it. So no one asked them when they saw the old moon. No one even interrogated them regarding the sightings of the old moon. They offered that information. Now, for someone who doesn't know the cheshbonos, right away you would discount the Edom. Why would you discount the Edom? Because if the old moon was seen 12 hours earlier, it takes 24 hours. Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri didn't say those words because the movements of the sun and the moon was a secret. People did not know about it. He did not want to go into it. According to his cheshbon, he knew it's not shaykh. He camouflaged. He says, we can't accept them because they're lying. Because if they say the old moon was seen in the morning, how can they see the new moon in the afternoon? Rabbi Gamliel knew that the cheshbon, he knew the cheshbon perfect. It's shaykh for them to have seen the new moon. It's possible for them to see the new moon. The fact that they testified in the morning that they saw the old moon, no one asked you, you were not interrogated, it's not negei halacha. Once Beis Din knows that the new moon could be seen, that's really what was going on. In other words, the whole Edom is a mitzvah lekadosh al pi hariyah, and they interrogated them. But prior to all that, Beis Din needed to know the emes. Rabbi Gamliel, who was the master of knowing astronomy, he knew it's emes. The moon was visible. And therefore, when two people came, he accepted them. That's the line over here. Weiter. My time of the Beit Rebbe, where do we find the source? From the household of the Nasi. This goes to Rabbi Gamliel, this goes to Hillel, this goes to David HaMelech. That really there's the Mahalach Emtsoi and the Mahalach Hamiti. These are the words of the Rambam. That really it's not exactly 29, 12, 793. But there is really more, there's so much more complexity in the precise position of the moon. Here it's a pasuk. It's based on a pasuk. We see it in scripture. It says, also, that God made the moon only to appoint the times. That's why God made the moon. And then he says, Shemash Yodam Avoy. People know the path of the sun. Hold on. To make the new month, you have to know the path of the sun and the path of the moon. God made the moon to make the Mayadim. So why didn't it say Shemash v'yoreach Yodam Avoy? That doesn't say that. That's the hint to us. Shemash hu Yodam Avoy. We know exactly the movement. It's a very simple movement. Even though, by the way, there's a machlokes between Shmuel and Abba Taka as to the speed of the movement, but the sun is affixed in the Galgal Hashemesh, and the Galgal Hashemesh is moving, whatever that movement is, from west to east every day, be'erech a degree, less than a degree, but be'erech a degree. The moon, the Galgal of the moon is Taka moving be'erech 13 degrees. But the moon is not fixed directly in the Galgal of the moon. It's fixed in another Galgal that's going in a circle. And in the Galgal of the moon, it changes positions. It makes everything a lot more complex. And it's possible that at times, like we mentioned, the moilad will happen a little bit quicker. And that was that case. And he knew it was possible for it to be seen.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Are we saying that these Edom Taka saw the old moon and the new moon? Or are we saying that
no,
they didn't see the old moon, but we don't
they saw a cloud. They saw a cloud. They saw something they thought was a moon. We don't even have to listen to them. We never asked them about them. We never interrogated. Beis Din has the right to completely discount something that was said. We never asked you to testify regarding it. It was dismissed.
So why are we talking about this inexactness? Like
that's what the Rambam says. The real machlokas that was not in the open was about whether the moon was visible or not. And it had to do with how much time passed since the prior moilad. And according to the average cycle, it was not visible yet. It happened to be during a month and a year, during a certain specific moment, where now the moon traveled a little bit quicker. So the moilad happened when they said it happened. Gavaldik. So learns the Rambam in the Gemara. Let's go weiter. Says the Gemara, Rab Chia Chazil L'Siyara. Rab Chia saw the moon. And the Hava Koi V'Tzafra the Esrim V'Tisha. In the 29th, guys, the moon never appears 29 days before, after the prior moilad. He saw it on the 29th, and here again, let's speak about that. It might have been Elul, it might have been a month where they wanted the month to be deficient. If the moon is seen the 29th, the old moon is seen the 29th in the morning, right? So then you cannot make the next day. Then if witnesses were to come that night by saying, if witnesses would have seen that night the new moon, then people will know that they're lying, based again on this rule, that from the old moon to the new moon, you got to wait at least 24 hours. So when he saw the old moon in the morning, Shakal kolo pasak bay. He picked up a cloud of earth and he threw it at the moon, and he tells the moon, "Oh, go hide yourself." We have to make sure that people see you tonight. And you're still visible. Zili kasi, go hide yourself. Huh. And especially as we learned above, that even for communal needs, fakir, that we don't want Shabbos and Yom Kippur to be back to back. So what happened? Omar le Rebbe le Rab Chia. Rebbe told Rab Chia, in our locale, what appeared to be the old moon was seen to everyone. If we were to establish the Rosh Chodesh, which is Rosh Hashana, a day earlier in this locale, no one will accept it because it mamish looked like the old moon. But the good thing is that the Sanhedrin was not convening then in this location where Rebbe was. The Sanhedrin was already convening in a place called Ein Tov. So Rebbe told Rab Chia, go to Ein Tov, and make sure that the new month will be established a day earlier. This month has to be deficient. And Vishalach li, and send the sign that you succeeded by sending me a message, David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim. David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim is that not only are the Jewish people compared to the moon, but this specifically refers to the family of David HaMelech, that when they are shining as they should, they are full, and then there is a cycle and there is a galus, and there are times that they don't appear to be who they really are, which is the Melech on the Jewish people. They are the kings over the whole world. And by bringing in the new month early, by so to say, by revealing that there is already a alignment, a milad, so to say, that's almost like ushering in the Geula moment early. And here again, the way they learn, that from the Cheshbin, they knew that what they're seeing cannot be the old moon. They were not playing around. But it mamish looked like the sliver of the old moon. And if Beis Din would have made that declaration, everyone would have criticized them. The beauty is that the Sanhedrin wasn't in another location. So while Beis Din was making the deliberation, no one was challenging it there. Once Beis Din paskins, as we learned in the Mishnah, everyone thought they made a mistake, but it's too late, because that was what we learned in the Mishnah, especially when it comes to the establishment of the calendar. It doesn't matter whether you know they were wrong or not. If they said Rosh Chodesh is A, it's on A. If they said B, it's B. And then they circumvented any opposition by them simply not being there.
Rabbi,
yes, let's move.
Is it possible that the prior month was made chasser when it really should have been mole, and that's why he was seeing the old moon, when whatever, I guess according to their calculations should have been.
So really the question would be, Danny, when we had that before, whether you can be ma'ayim on the Eidin, on Eidin, to say that they saw when they didn't see. That would really be the question. In other words, when was really Rosh Chodesh? Whether it is because for communal needs, they didn't want to keep Shabbos and Yom Kippur, so it would just be better for them to make Rosh Chodesh a day earlier, or whether they knew where the moon is going to be. And therefore they knew from the Cheshbin that what they're seeing is not the old moon, but no one would believe them. It looked like the old moon. Okay, weiter. There was a time that it was very cloudy, and the need is the and the likeness of the new moon, same thing, was seen early, the likeness, and therefore, based on what they saw, they wanted to make it a big shubesh and lekatre. So and this sounds almost dafka, not like before. That ein chidusha shalavana pechusa me'esrim v'tishim yom u'mechza u'shnei shalishi shah v'ayin gimel chalakim. That you need to have, and really it's the average of 29 days, 12 hours, and 793 chalakim. Again, we don't have minutes. We divide 1 hour into 1,080 chalakim, and therefore, again, he knew that the moon was not seen. And if the Beis Din knows, based on the real movements of the heavenly bodies, that the new moon is not visible, we automatically discount what the Eidim say. And this woman passed away, and if that day would have been Rosh Chodesh, one of the things that we may not do Rosh Chodesh is making a eulogy. Who made the eulogy? Rabban Gamliel eulogized her, and not Stam, a Hesped Gadol, and not because she was worthy of it. That's a Gemara. Everyone saw the new moon. what they thought is the new moon. Rabbi Gamliel needed to do an action to make it clear, today will not be Rosh Chodesh. It's only Erev Rosh Chodesh, and therefore she was eulogized. Now we go to the second story in the Mishnah. El halach umatzoi Rabbi Akiva Meitzad. No, it's who went and who found whom to be distressed. When they read the words of the Mishnah, it was not clear. Me Meitzad, whether Rabbi Akiva was Meitzad, Rabbi Shua was Meitzad. So Tashema, the Tanya, a record, a more elaborate record of the story that halach Rabbi Akiva umatzoi Rabbi Yeshua kishuhu Meitzad. So really, it wasn't Rabbi Yeshua who traveled. Rabbi Yeshua who heard from Rabbi Doisa that he's right before Rabbi Doisa gave in. Wow, how can you make such a decree? Right? Me'idim al Isa sheyalda, and then ulamacher kreisa ben shineha. So, and you're telling me to violate what I know to be Yom Kippur? Rabbi Akiva found him, and Amaloi Rebbe mepnei ma'ata meitzad, and Amaloi, to which Rabbi Shor responded that Rabbi Akiva ro'u loy sheyipol amital yud beis chodesh. I would rather have a decree for me, God forbid, to be so sick that I would be bedridden for 12 months. But not to have a decree for me to be Machal Yom Kippur. So Amaloi, to which Rabbi Akiva responds to, who was one of his teachers, calling him therefore Rebbe. And by the way, that's why, according to many versions, Rabbi Yeshua called him by his name without Rebbe. Tarsheni, please give me permission to repeat to you something that you, Rabbi Yeshua, taught me. So Amaloi Emor, Zok, Amaloi, Harehu, the Torah writes 3 times the words that make Asher Tikru Oisam. In all of these times, Oisam, them, meaning the holidays, are written without a vav, which allows us to also darshan and read the word different. Not Oisam, them, but Atem, you. You will declare the day into a holiday. Atem, Gimel Pa'amim, coming to teach you. Atem afilu shegigim. That means even if we know the Beis Din shows the date based on an error, they made a mistake. They made a mistake in Hilchas Eidos. They made a mistake in interrogation. They made a mistake in their cheshbon. They made a mistake in the communal needs. They made a mistake. Once they did it, done. Atem afilu mezidim. It's like a shidduch. Once you're married, you're married, you're married. That's it. You understand? Mekudesh. Atem afilu. It's not a mistake. Azoy dav zayin. Atem afilu mezidim. Even if it's on purpose. The Beis Din, knowing that it's not really Rosh Chodesh, declare it Rosh Chodesh. Atam afilu muta'im. This is the worst. Muta'im means that we've discovered that we were misled. It's like the Baisusim, thank God we're caught. Imagine if they would not have been caught. And then we would have discovered that they tricked us. So I know that they tricked us. We didn't want to make it Rosh Chodesh. So let's undo it. You can't. But once it's done, it's Rosh Chodesh. And the Lashon Hazeh Amalei, and exactly these are the words that Rabbi Yeshua responded, Akiva, Nichamtani, Tach. In other words, now he felt comfortable, Taka, to go on what Rabbi Gamliel's 11th day is with his stick and with his money. And furthermore, before that, Balei Eitzel Rabbi Doisa ben Hurkenes. Rabbi Yeshua went to Rabbi Doisa ben Hurkenes. And again, Rabbi Doisa ben Hurkenes, who himself in the Beis Midrash argued with Rabbi Gamliel, that's one thing. That's when we're learning. But when it comes to Psak Din, Rabbi Doisa told him the following: why didn't the Torah write down their names? And the answer is Adam, for people in the future not to challenge the greatness of their Dayan by saying, Pliny Moshe, what is this Dayan like Moshe? Is this judge like Aaron? Is this judge like Nadav and Avihu? And Taka, we also have in another context, there's both by Sinai, the 70 elders that are not mentioned, and also later in Baha Loischa, when God told Moshe Rabbeinu to give from his Ruach on others. And as the whole sipur over there, that really there should have been 72. So 2 tribes only gave 5, and 8 Eldad and Medad from their humility, they stayed in the camp, and they Taka became Nevi'im. They're the only 2 that are mentioned. Pliny ke Eldad and Medad. So the Torah doesn't mention their names. To tell you, you don't know who they were. Maybe the guy here, maybe the Dayan here is just as great as them. And furthermore, and it says, Elohim Hashem Asher Asa Es Moshe Ves Aaron. And V'oimar, over there in Shmuel, Vayishlach Hashem Es Yerubal, God sent for us a leader called Yerubal. We'll see soon who he is. Ve'es Bidon, ve'es Yiftach, ve'es Shmuel. First, let's identify who are these people. Yerubal actually goes to Gideon. Why is he called Yerubal? Because he successfully he fought against the avodah zarah known as the Baal. Bidan refers to Shimshon. Why is he called Bidan? Because he comes from the tribe of Dan. Yiftach was actually his name. Now, these were great people, but relative to Moshe and Aaron and Shmuel, they were not as great. And when we have that Moshe, the Aaron, B'Chayanov, Ushmuel B'Kodesh Shemai, this pasuk shows us that these three are the greatest of our leaders. Moshe and Aaron goes without saying, but Shmuel is also one of those who evoke God's name. The fact that it's juxtaposed to Moshe and Aaron, actually, there's a Chazal that say that Shmuel was as great as Moshe and Aaron together. No, it's Moshe and Aaron and Shmuel, relative. We don't have the right to measure, but they were the greatest. And yet we find in Amud Aleph that Shmuel is putting them all together, that God sent Yerubal and Bedan and Yiftach and himself in third person and Shmuel. Oh, that's to tell you that Shakal HaKosav Shloisha Kali Olam, that, so to say, the least significance of our leaders were given the same covet, they're given the same weight, like Kishloisha Chamuri Olam, like the three of the most important of our leaders. And why is that Loimelach? That Yerubal B'Doiroi is Kemoisha B'Doiroi. Bedan B'Doiroi is Ka'aran B'Doiroi. Yiftach B'Doiroi, Kishmol B'Doiroi. V'Lamdecha, Sha'afilu Kal Shabakalim. Look at these words, that even the most insignificant, from the most insignificant, this is all by the Hashgacha Pratis, as is everything else. The Nesman, the partners on a tzibur, if this person was appointed to be a communal leader, Harehu Ka'abir Shaba'abirim. He's like the most distinguished from the most distinguished. And they all Rabdoisa. And then he went weiter. And it says in Parsha Schweifer that when you have a doubt, you should go to the one who's judging in those days. Who else can you go to? You don't even have that option. But you're going to go to someone who lived 200 years ago. You have to go to the judge of your days. In other words, the Torah is telling you that you can, of course, you're going to go to the judge of your days, but you might not, you might go with a heavy heart. You might say, well, no, if he is the judge now, that's the one God wants you to go to. And as it says, that Al Toimer, this is a statement of Shlomo HaMelech, what can I do that and actually the way Rashi says, in other words, that on one hand, we do say that there is a Yeridas Hadoros. And therefore, because of the prior generations, greater stature, certain things happened, even big Ashmiyas that were better compared to now, more tzaras, because our behavior is not necessarily the way it could be and will be. So there is a truth to Yeridas Hadoros. Nevertheless, don't say like, my Rabbi Leib Shapiro always used to say that by Hasidim, Timcha Ezecher Amalek, you know what Amalek means? Amalek Yodim. Timcha, uproot this Amal. It used to be, remember, you begin reminiscing, and the way God made most healthy people is that the past is always very beautiful, that we forget the not good, and we have this image that used to be much greater, and there's a way of looking at life. It's the way things are the way they should be. We have to get better, but the generation is b'diyuk the way it should be. And all of that is just to tell you that even though Rabbi Yeshua felt that he was, so to say, greater than Rabbi Gamliel, and his psak din was the correct one, Rabbi Yosef ben Hurkana says, even if you're right, you're wrong. If Rabbi Gamliel, since he was appointed to be the Rabban means he was the head of the Sanhedrin, then his ruling is binding. And what happened, Natal, Makloy, Mo'esav, B'yadai, he took any type of chilul Yom Kippur, theoretically he made. When Rabbi Gamliel saw him, Aman Mikisa, he stood up from his chair, and he kissed him on his head. And Amar Loin, he tells him, Shalom Alecha, Rebbe v'Talmidai. Rebbe, he called him a Rebbe, Shilim Adar 20 Rabbi. I think this goes perhaps to the story of Brachas Chav Zayin Amud Beis, even though the Gemara there doesn't record, Rabbi Yeshua was silent. V'Talmidai sh'ani goyzer alecha gzeiram v'ata mekayma, but you behave like my Talmud, Ketalmud. And Ashrei Hagor, then he says, Ashrei Hagor, fortunate is the generation that even the Gedolim, he was calling Rabbi Yeshua the Gedolim, that they listen to the Ketanim. And therefore, Kal v'chomer, that Ketanim should listen to Gedolim. Now, they thought that the Rabbi Gamliel was speaking about obligation. Obligation, you need a kal v'chomer, that the Ketanim have to listen to the Gedolim. That's not a kal v'chomer, that's an obligatory. Of course, we have to listen to the ones who are greater than us. So Ella, he clarified, he wasn't speaking about the letter of the law, he was speaking about inspiration. He was speaking about, so to say, human nature. That if a person will hesitate to listen to a psak of a gadol, he would be so inspired from Rabbi Yeshua, he'll say to himself that right? So nishmaim lektanim, so noisim ketanim kalv'chomer b'yatz, one day on their own they'll be inspired, so to say, to submit themselves to the authority and to the piskei dinim of the leaders of their times. And with that we say hadron Allah im ein makirim, and God willing we are now starting. We're going to come back to the Perek Sheni, and with Be'ezras Hashem, we are starting now the third chapter. Now, the third chapter has a very important switch over. I mean, we are learning the heart, the little pashut that we have from Soid HaIbur is here, Be'ikid and Rosh Hashana. Of course, Divrei Torah is everywhere, but we're going to have now the first Mishnah. Rabbeinu HaKadosh Dafke did not keep in the second chapter. The new Mishnah will continue with the same theme. But as we'll see, whether we'll get there today, whether we'll get there in the next year, on Daf Chavav, further, it mamish changes topic. We're going to stop learning about the whole Kiddush HaChodesh ceremony and procedure and cheshbon, and we're going to go mamish to Rosh Hashana, to the laws of a Schweifer. But let's begin now. Again, the new Perek is continuing with the same topic of until now. That even though there was a mitzvah on the Beis Din to know the cheshbon, that was kept amongst a very elite group. And then there was this whole concept that Eidim have to come and see the moon, and they have to testify, and we had what we interrogated them, how we interrogated them, and then there was the declaration that was necessary. So says the Mishnah, Ra'u Beis Din and V'chol Yisrael. Imagine, not only the Beis Din, they saw the new moon, everyone in Yerushalayim saw the new moon. So it's a given. You know, they saw it the night going into the 30th. Everyone knew tomorrow the Beis Din opens up, Adam will come there. And you know what, the irony of human nature, when something is such a given, you can delay it. They delayed it. By the time they began to deliberate, it was already very late in the afternoon. And when Nechkeru Adam, by the time that they began to do what we learned in the last page, asking one Ada questions, the other Ada questions, they did not have sufficient time to make the final proclamation. The Av Beis Din said, Mekudesh, the Rosh Beis Din, the Mishnah calls it. Everyone else answered, Mekudesh, that didn't happen. It was already Chashecha. Now, whatever, Chashecha can mean Shkia, Chashecha can mean Seis, it can mean a Hasidish Seis. Whenever the cutoff point is, it was already the cutoff point. Now, all the deliberation happened before. Says the Mishnah, too late. Everyone knows that the day 30 wasn't day 30. Everyone saw the new moon. I don't care. Beis Din is the one that establishes the Rosh Chodesh. Harei ze me'uber. Case number 2. Halacha number 2. Ra'u Beis Din bulvad. Here you have like this. You have the Sanhedrin, not 3, many, 20 of them. They were the only ones that saw the new moon. Only people that are sitting as judges saw the new moon. So what the Mishnah is telling you, and as the Gemara will unpackage this, let me just say something very important. Lishitas Rashi. If they would have seen the new moon at the end of day 30, I mean during the day, if they saw the new moon, then you don't have to have witnesses testifying in front of a Beis Din. They saw it, they can declare Mekudesh based on what they're saying right now. Lishitas Rashi. What happened here is that they saw the new moon last night, the night going into the 30th. At night, you cannot adjudicate cases. So Beis Din was closed. So now you have to go and you have to have this Mekudesh later. Later, you have to have people testifying. But the only Eidim are members of the Sanhedrin. So the Mishnah says, doesn't matter. Yamdu Shnaim, 2 of the people should get off normally they sit on the side of the judges. Don't act as a judge. You stand in front of whoever else is there. You need to have at least 3, but there were more, 3 or more, and go through the same thing. And Mekudesh. But what happens if from the ganze Sanhedrin and all the Jewish people, only 3 judges saw it? If 2 of the 3 are going to act as witnesses, which they must, then now there's only one judge. Now you can say, what are you talking about? The Sanhedrin has 70 judges. Okay, so we went on Golos and the Romans were persecuting us. And there were times that the group of the Beis Din that were designated to declare Rosh Chodesh, there were only 3. If 2 of them are needed to be Eidim, so then you have to elevate 2 other people and sit them on the side of this one judge. Ra'u, only Shloshim, and they're the only Beis Din, you got to bring in new people. Yamdu Hashnayim, 2 of the 3 that saw it will have to testify. You have to have them testifying. Now you only have one judge, so the Yoshivu Mechavereim Eitzel Hayachid, at least 2 others, which normally are not members of the Beis Din that declares Rosh Chodesh, they now become judges of that court. So now you have 3. Only one of them is proficient in the rules of interrogation, so be it. They all knew the halachas theoretically, but one has experience. Say that. He's not alone. There's 2 other people with him. The Yoidu B'Fneim, and now the 2 witnesses will testify in front of this new made Beis Din. And again, V'Yoimru, and which is the Iker, and the declaration Mekudesh can happen. What was wrong with one judge? She'ein hayachid nemon al yidei atzmai. A individual judge cannot proclaim the sanctification of the month while he's sitting alone. He has to be sitting with 2 other dayanim. Now the Gemara, let's see how far we can get. We'll unpackage the Mishnah, focusing first on the first case. First case, the Mishnah was trying to convey that what makes Rosh Chodesh is the declaration Mekudesh and Mekudesh. Certainly the declaration Mekudesh from the Rosh Beis Din. Why was it Negeah to know that all of the Jewish people saw the moon? I mean, the Mishnah is telling you that, that even though they knew it, the Beis Din knew it, they saw it themselves. If they didn't do it, then you can't make that day Rosh Chodesh. So the question is on the words V'chol Yisrael. So the Gemara says, no, there is a novelty. It's needed. You would have thought, everyone saw the new moon last night. Everyone knows that today should be from the new month. So therefore, if the appearance is so mefursim, it's so well known, then they cannot afford to say today is Chodesh Me'ubar, because people will know that it's Nish Emes. Today cannot remain day 30. Kumash Malon, that they do that. And that's mamash behemshach to what we learned today in the last Pedic, in the beginning of today's Daf. Everyone also knew that what makes Rosh Chodesh is the declaration of the Beis Din. They should have declared, they could have declared, true, but they didn't. Now the Gemara is going further. Let's understand how every case in the Mishnah is adding a psachidish. The Tana later Beis Din B'chol Yisrael. Why does the Mishnah even have to write Nechkeru ha'edim lamali? In other words, if only the Beis Din saw it, then of course you have to make a deliberation. You have to begin to interrogate. If it was visible that everyone saw the new moon, it's not Nageya. The Chiddush is that even though they all saw it, they didn't declare it, it's not Rosh Chodesh. So the Gemara says it must be 2 cases. Even if all of the Sanhedrin saw it, if they didn't declare it, it's not. Another case, that even if Stam Eitim saw it, but the Eidim passed the interrogation. But by the time they passed the interrogation, it was already dark. In both cases, no matter what, but why do we need that? Again, the Tana, so why do we need the second case? The point is simply that you have to make the declaration. That is what does it. It's not a siman, it's a siba, it's a cause, and it has to be done halachically during the day and not when it's dark. So says the Gemara, no, that case is also needed. First case was needed, like we said, because since ifarsim law, you would think if everyone knows about it, you can't make it into the day 30. You can't leave it 30. Another chiddush. It's you would think that the heavy chakiras edim ketchilas din. Who told you you can't sanctify it? Why would you not be able to sanctify it? The beginning, the chakiras edim, the interrogation of the witnesses, is the beginning of the din. And we find elsewhere by monetary laws, which also may never start at night. If it started during the day, it can conclude during the night, right? You would think that you could look at the Chakira So'edim as the beginning. Mekudesh is only like the conclusion. The Gemara did. And if that would have been the way we look at it, then we might have thought they should be able to declare it at night. And I have a precedent. When it comes to adjudicating all monetary cases, like we learn in the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, that even though, again, we don't begin a din Torah at night, but if there was a din imamanis din Torah, which is so common, today, until you get the dayanim to sit together, until you get all the parties to be together, you began the case, go. Done in Bayoim, you can finish it at night. Now, I just want to give another contrast. When it comes to capital cases, you never go. There has to be sleep on it, always. Even if they already concluded something during the day, they would write down their svaras, they would go to sleep, and they would repeat it. But by din amanis, once you began it, you're good. So you might have thought Medkachin Balayla by the fact that there was a Hakira so Eden Bayoim. That's as if you began it that day. Kamash Malon, that no. The question is why not? So answers the Gemara Amar Krobi, again, the second time we had it, that when it says Ki Yisrael hu mishpat alekei Yaakov, this is also in reference to the whole idea of Kiddush HaChodesh, calling it a mishpat. The choik, a choik is something that's established. The word choik is specifically the psak, or here, the gemar din, that the choik is bound by the rules of mishpat. Beautiful. The rules of mishpat, the rule of judgments is it has to be done by the day. By din amanis, the whole thing is one big mishpat. And if it began mincha before shkia, ken shen daven and shveter. No, but not over here. Here, we don't view it as the beginning and an ending. There is one thing, the choik. How Beis Din gets to the choik is separate. Of course, you need to have interrogation of the Eidim. Choik is what normally is called Gemar Din. And the Kokorele Rachmana, this is the judgment. The choik is the judgment. And therefore, judgment has to be by day. So here, the Gemar Din, it has to also be by the day.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Rabbi, just interesting that we're willing to go as far as Mechalo Shabbos to Mekadosh Chodesh, but we can't push off a din Torah.
We're going as far to be Mechalo Shabbos for the Eidim to come. Well, not to push off, correct. And we cannot paskin at night, correct. Yeah, these are the rules. Very good point. Good point. The ones who failed, l'chayra, where it was the Beis Din. And they failed because they felt everyone saw it. It only takes us normally 15. The two Eidim that they called in first, it was not, well, maybe things got tripped up over there. They said something and then you needed to clarify, then you needed to know whether you should call, and then they had a deliberation, then there was an emergency. The kids do not procrastinate. Right. Next case in the Mishnah was that if only the ones who are otherwise members of the Sanhedrin, if they were the ones that saw, so then from those, let's say, potential judges, yeah, they become witnesses. Yeah, Ya'amdu Shnayim from those of the Beis Din, and they should testify in front of the remaining Beis Din members as long as there's three. Now the Gemara wants to understand, why do you even need to have people testifying in front of the judges if the judges themselves saw it? And again, we're quoting Gemara Rashi, as we said when we learned the Mishnah, that Lashitas Rashi, Eina Chanami. If the Sanhedrin would have seen it during the day, they would have declared it taka without Eidim. If they are giving a judgment right after seeing it, you don't need this whole Eidim Hakira. Va'amai, why do you have to have Eidim? Why do you have witnesses? The Torah says that once you have two witnesses, you know it to be a fact. They saw it. Seeing it is better than hearing it. The judges already know that the new moon is out there. So therefore, answers the Gemara, you're right, that the case of the Mishnah is only if the moon would have been seen at the end of the 30th day, which is the other option of making 31, then they would declare it without anyone testifying. But here, they saw it the night going into the 30th, they saw it at a time that they cannot make that declaration. The moment you are now going to declare the day Rosh Chodesh, not during the time of seeing, now you have to have witnesses testifying.
But how can a judge become a witness anyway?
Okay, so this sugya tzemach will begin in the next year, and I'm going to shed more light to your statement. Right, that's the sugya of Eid Nasa Dayan. It's really the other way around. We're going to speak about that in the Pasha. There's not enough time, but very good point, and we're going to learn a big chiddush in our Gemara. Okay, but let's go right.
Rabbi, can you just finish this answer? Didn't everybody normally see it the night of the 29th going into the 30th, and then testify the next day?
Either then, Danny. So we spoke out today that the fact is that there were times that the night going into the 30th, the new moon was not visible, but if it became visible, Danny, it's possible that you don't even have sunset the next day, but the sun is already near setting, so the light in the sky is not that great. The moon is not exactly 12 degrees away from the sun. It's already, let's say, 20 degrees away from the sun. And people can see it at the end of the 30th when it's still halachically day. And if the Dayanim would have seen it then, according to Rashi, they see it, they're sitting in their chambers, look at the moon, mekudesh.
Well, maybe they were traveling or less cloudy or mountain areas, and by the time they got to the city, they were able to testify.
Very good. Samach is making a statement based on the rule that they can only declare it in their chambers. Lav dafka, but okay. Whatever the case is, that's a big chiddush here, that you need to have people presenting the case, even if it's their members, only if they're not declaring it during the seeing, during the sighting of the new moon. Okay, right.
So the typical case of seeing it the night of the 29th, that's what the Gemara is talking about?
Yes.
That's the time that they would come the next day to testify in front of themselves.
Yes. Now, what happens if from the ganze Sanhedrin only 3, or the only 3 members that normally preside over the establishment of the new month, these 3 saw. So the Haim Bezdin, okay, so again, you need to have witnesses. They saw it at night prior. You have to have Eidim and a Bezdin. So Yamdu Shnayim to be the Eidim, but now you're only with one judge. So so 2 other people get promoted, and you see they were not into promotion so quickly over here. So again, first of all,
those guys, did they know how to investigate the other judges? In other words, was it?
I think Yakir, in this case, because it was their colleagues and they had a lot of issues with them, or did they interrogate them? Whew. Even though the judge himself saw it was Freilach. But again, the same question: why do you have to have people testifying? They saw it, let them declare it. So you're going to answer, it was the same case of before. And if you're going to tell me, they saw it the night prior, so what's the chiddush here? What's the novelty? So the Gemara says there is a novelty. The novelty is that you have to promote 2 judges. The remaining judge cannot claim that I'm the widely renowned expert. And we have in other types of adjudications, monetary dinei Torah, where a yachid mumcha is qualified. Here, he's never qualified. The greatest expert, you have to have 3, at least 3. You would think, as we had a braisa in Sanhedrin, that even though the rule is dinim amanis b'shloisha, it's ideal. And Pirkei Avos is altei don yechidi. But there's still a rule that if you are the mumcha lirabim, that means that you are a widely recognized expert. Many dayanim think that they're the mumcha lirabim, so dana filo v'yachid. So hachinami nekachavi yichidi. That's the chiddush. Kumash will never. Ema hachinami. Why don't we indeed say so? So the Gemara answers, and this is the rule, my friends. You never have a beis din shakel. That's a rule. You never have a beis din of 2. You never have a beis din of an even number. We had this in the beginning of Sanhedrin, because you have to follow the majority, and you want to make it in a way where even though it's always shaykh for one dayan to say, I don't know, and he's removed, and you replace him, you got to side. Is it this or is it that? And then you add up, tally the votes. You make a minyan. So it's either 1, 3, v'chule. Now, by the way, there are exceptions. There's a beis din of 10, but that's the normal rule. So after 1, you go to 3. God taught him Kiddush HaChodesh. And he had a visual demonstration, not with the like Rabbi Gamliel. God showed him the sun and the moon. He saw the whole thing. And and God told Moshe Rabbeinu, until you have someone else with you, you cannot be Mekadosh the Chodesh. You cannot be Mekadosh the Chodesh. As it says, Hashem el Moshe ve'el Aaron, Beres Mitzrayim Lemer, HaChodesh is Elochem. So hold on. So ask Schweifer, okay, so the pasuk is 1, 2, Moshe and Aaron. Here we're saying 3. That's the point. We see from over there, not 1. You cannot be. The fact that God told Aaron, we're not focusing on that 2 are good. We're looking that 1 is not good. If 1 is not good, then you have to have another 2 people. And there was a 3rd one. Plato doesn't mention it for other reasons. It's 1, or the next step is number 3, Gavaldik. God willing to be continued.
Sure.
Okay, guys, a few minutes. So if Kevin can put the 4 gross o'clock, or if by the time you put it, it's already into it, then put it 3:50, and I'm coming right back.
Rabbi,
Yes.
can you explain something that I'm not getting with the whole case of Rabban Gamliel? If you had a Sanhedrin that's adjudicating it, how does Rabban Gamliel get to decide? I mean, clearly they had a good question on why these guys shouldn't be believed. So he himself was able to say, nope, we're being Makodesh, and everybody has to go along with it. Like
they were according to the way we learned the Gemara, and we're learning it the way that Rambam understood the Gemara, is that they were having a machlokes in the Mahalach Amiti. Like Al Derech Shmuel and Abba had a machlokes regarding the Mahalach Hashemesh. Everyone agrees that the Edom that said they saw the old moon, we discount those words. It's not negaya. We don't take that into the equation. And if you follow the rule that the Rabban Gamliel himself said, that between one moilad and the other moilad is 29 days and 12 hours and 793, it wasn't the 793. It was a little bit less.
I just don't understand why this becomes a personal disagreement between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabban Gamliel, when if they have a Sanhedrin, whatever it is, 23 guys, 72 guys, however many there were, and these are big dudes. So it wasn't just one rabbi that decided, like Rabban Gamliel. There was a whole Sanhedrin that said that way.
No. I'm saying this statement.
Rabban Gamliel doesn't get to decide on his own.
Sure, he
part
does.
Of the Sanhedrin.
No, sure he does, because he had a Kabbalah that no one else had. This line, Pamim Shabbat Baruch, Pamim Shabbat Bitzara, Danny, the Rambam says we don't use that normally. When Hillel the Minor made the calendar, he didn't use that. He went on the Mahalach, the average Mahalach. No one knew about this. No one knew the details of it. But when Rabban Gamliel says, I have a Kabbalah that it's possible, they accepted it. I don't think Rabbi Yeshua didn't want to accept it. He didn't learn it that way. I think there was information that was a soid that Rabbi Yeshua didn't have. And the other colleagues of Rabban Gamliel, when he insisted, it's like Bayos Dani, when the Rebbe gives up side din. Today, when the Rebbe took a certain side in halach, which the Rebbe didn't do that often, every Lubavitch Rav accepted it. Then, of course, it has to be al pi halach. We'll figure out how it's al pi halach. And another Rav says it's not. He would argue. That's he didn't. He wasn't submitting.
I like that. All right.
Okay. Chevra, weiter.
By the way, you called Rabban Gamliel the Rosh Sanhedrin. Actually, he was the Nasi, and Rabbi Yeshua was the Rosh Sanhedrin. So he was like the number 2.
Well, one second, Danny. So Rabbi Yeshua was number 2.
Yes, Rabbi Yeshua was number 2.
That's right.
He had the title Rosh Sanhedrin.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Danny, Ta'anim get paid by the hour. Everybody was jumping to get involved.
Danny, let him get a coffee.
I have a cold coffee. Let's go by it.
Let him get a hot one.
Cold is fine. We have to learn.
Somebody get him a hot coffee.
We're gonna make it hot. We're gonna warm up. Okay, Chavra,
I'm gonna get another hot coffee.
With the help of Hashem, we are learning Rosh Hashana Daf Chav Vav. We left off and the last line on Daf Chav Hey Amid Beis. With the Gemara is referring back to the cases in the Mishnah, and there were a few cases in the Mishnah. 3 cases in the Mishnah, all of them share one commonality, that the judges themselves, prior to them sitting as judges, they saw the new moon, which means that potentially they could have been witnesses. They can be witnesses. They also qualify to be judges. And we have throughout Chazal 2 topics that for some reason, and there's wisdom into this, obviously, we give it the same framing. There's the sugya called Eid Nasadayim. Can a witness become a dayan. I just want you to know that it's clear from our Gemara that there are two topics of Eid Nasa Dayan. There is a case of Eid Nasa Dayan. Listen to this, guys. There's a case where someone will actually testify standing in the witness's box, wearing the hat of a witness, and that same person then will move, he'll put on the judge's robe, and he'll sit over there, they used to sit high, and he would sit as a judge. That's one topic. Can you do that? Can you testify, and then you sit as a judge? That's not the topic of our Gemara. Our Gemara has another topic. They're both called Eid Nasadayin. Eid Nasadayin here means if you saw something, which means potentially you could be a witness, can you choose not to testify? You're not going to be the witness. You'll have other witnesses, but you'll be the judge. Can a potential witness be a judge? That's another topic. And as we'll see, it's a machlokes tanoim. And therefore, it l'chu'ura appears that our Mishnah is taking one side of that machlokes by holding that an aid, a potential witness, could serve as a dayan, and Gemara will clarify that that's not the case. The general machlokes of Eid Nasa Dayan is only by din and nefashos, and it's not shaykh to the rules, to the question of Kiddush HaChodesh, as we'll learn. And like we mentioned in the last year, that on Daf Chavav, which is only the second Mishnah in the third Perek, it's like a new topic, to the point that many Rishonim don't understand why didn't Rabbeinu HaKadosh include the first Mishnah of the third chapter in the second Perek and begin the new Perek over here. And at least it's clear over here that the level of Ruach HaKodesh and the layers of the understanding of the Mishnayos, Mishnah, Oisius, Neshama is amazing. And according to many other concepts that are being revealed through the Mishnah, no, the third Perek Dafka began Ra'u based on the Chol Yisrael, and we're going to start, at least today, now this new topic of what shofar must be used or may be used for the mitzvah blowing of the shofar. Now, as we'll see, there was the blowing of the shofar that we do on Rosh Hashana. There was the blowing of the shofar that the Beis Din does on the Yovel here on Yom Kippur. We're going to learn a lot more in the next Masechta Tainis that during fast days, not the fixed fast days, but whenever there's a tzara shaloi tovei, and we understand that God forbid nothing is mikra nikra, and even though it could be that certain terrible things happen that are beyond our understanding, beyond us, but we have to say, maybe it's me. What's my part? And that should arouse us to upgrade our behavior. So a tainus is connected to tshuva. And on a fast day, they would blow with trumpets, but they also would blow with shofars. So we're going to be learning about shofar, beginning shofar of Rosh Hashana. What type of shofar is kosher to be used for the mitzvah? The mitzvah is the lishmoya koil shofar, but any shofar. So our Mishnah will use the expression that kol ha-shofros or kol ha-shofaros keshedim chutz mishal para, and we'll quote Bekitzer that Ramban. Kol, does that include non-domesticated animals? Does that even include perhaps animals that are not kosher? For other dinim in the Torah, that which is not mutar beficha, like the parchment upon which we write stam, can only be from a kosher animal species. It doesn't have to be from an animal that was slaughtered, but you can't take the hide of a non-kosher animal and use it for the parchment. We'll see whether shofar might be different. This is all the Rishonim, the topic. But the ikar here that we will be learning about is that if we're going to focus only on domesticated kosher animals, for which there are only three types, the cattle type, which are oxen and cows, and you have goats, and you have lambs. Now, lambs, let's speak about rams, which are male lambs in their second year and older. So really, it's going to boil down to a cow, according to Machlekes Tanoim. We don't use the horn of a cow, of an ox, of a bull. The other two options will be of a goat, certain goats, and rams. The big difference between them will be that naturally a ram's horn is bended, it's kafuf. A wild goat's horn, it's not straight, but relative to the ram is considered a straight. So it's a ram, which is an ayol, versus the yael, this wild goat. And we're going to unpackage this whole sugya. What's ideal? To use a straight one, to use a bent one. The Gemara is going to give some agadaten to the meaning behind the bent and the meaning behind the straight. There's Rosh Hashana, there's Yovel, there's a fast day. It's mamish fascinating and much more. Let's go. So we're starting again on Daf Chafei Amid Beis, the last line of the Amid. Our aid Nasa Dain Sugya is whether someone who potentially could serve as a witness, can that person opt? I'm not going to be the aid, I'm going to be the dayan. But how can you be the dayan if you yourself can be the witness? So remember the fact that the cases that the Mishnah gave included where the whole Beis Din saw the new moon. So some of them will be witnesses. The others won't be the witness, they'll be the dayan. That means a potential witness. That's Rashi, 3 lines from the bottom. And that's very important, again, not to confuse this with another sugya that Chazal uses the same words, but it has a complete different meaning. Here it's, if you potentially could be a witness, can you not be a witness and only be a judge? Remember the Eid Nasa Dayan. If that would be the case, then our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Akiva. The Tanya, Sanhedrin, the ganze Sanhedrin saw Reuven killing Shimon. And you should know, when we learned this in Sanhedrin, it's not just about murder. This is regarding any capital violation, which means that if someone is to be found guilty in the court, they will be judged to be killed. So says Daf Chavav, here we have the two shitos. Tanakama here is Rabbi Tarfin, says Miktsason nasu edim u'miktsasim nasu dayanim. Just because you potentially could have been a witness, as long as you don't actually act as a witness, as long as you don't put on 2 hats, so then fine, then you can stay as a judge. Comes along the great Rabbi Akiva, that so says the great Rabbi Tarfon. However, Rabbi Akiva, no, that kulam nasam edim, you're only eligible to be edim. None of the people who saw the actual act of murder are allowed even to sit as a judge. Why? Because ve'ein eid nasa dayan. So, is our Mishnah not like Rabbi Akiva? Says the Gemara, no, our Mishnah doesn't go into that argument. Afilu teim Rabbi Akiva. When it comes to dinei nefashos, like we mentioned, it's not just about murder, also murder. It's about chilul Shabbos b'mezid b'hasra, skila. It's about all the other violations for where there's if you are found guilty, if someone is found guilty, they will be put to death by the Beis Din, in the Beis Din, outside the Beis Din, but through the Beis Din. Over there, Zakta Gemara, Zakta Rabbi Akiva, that since the Rachmana Amar, and this is a pasuk in Parshas Masei, V'shoftu ha'eda, v'hitzilu ha'eda, the Torah juxtaposes them being judged and then being saved. And here we have this amazing concept that the judges do not go in there completely objective. The goal, the rule, the position, the mindset of judges in capital cases is to do their best to find how the person is not going to be killed in a Beis Din. All of this is predicated on the emes that Yesh Din v'Yesh Dain, God is the judge. We never have the attitude, oh, no justice was done. Justice is always done by God. God entrusted with us to be partners in a limited case that justice should happen through the Beis Din. Now, in those cases, we're obligated. And part of that obligation is that if it's a capital case, do the best you could to see that this person will not be found guilty. If the person is taka guilty, zorg sich nicht. Either they won't find him innocent, or God will execute justice. But their goal of din and nefashos is for them to be biased to the side of meritus. And even the chaziyuhu, the katal nafsha, if they themselves saw the accused Reuven as him, they saw him murder Shimon. Any evidence that's going to be brought into court, that's going to be, so to say, defending Shimon, they won't be able to accept it because they saw him. They know he's a murderer. That's why they're disqualified, according to Rabbi Akiva. Over here, the whole concept of a shoftu eid of tzil is loy shayach. Here, you want to have for the Beis Din to be unbiased, to do the best they could. And by the way, they saw the moon, they saw the moon, so they're going to listen to the Eidim, and they're going to accept their witnesses, their testimony. I feel that potential witnesses can serve as judges. Now, if they actually testified, from our Mishnah, it's clear that if they testified, they cannot now sit in the seat of a judge. Zoisloi. You should know that there are other areas where we even allow for that to happen. And our Mishnah does enter that machlokes, and our Mishnah is not l'kula alma. Our Mishnah is only l'kula alma regarding potential witnesses serving as judges. Okay, now we are opening up. Chavra, new
What
topic.
about it? How would this look in Dini Mamanis or other types of witnesses? Eid Nasadayin. Over here, we're talking about two specific types of cases.
So by din imamanis, there are other things that we take into account, Samach, that is similar. For example, that if one dayan heard one person's side prior to him here, that was said not in the presence of the other, he also should not serve as a judge. There's also similar concepts, but not to this degree. In other words, by din imamanis, we want for the person to be impartial. By din and nefashos, not only do we want him to be impartial, we want him dafka to find the schos. That you don't have by din amamis. Here the judges will want for it to be Rosh Chodesh. They will be impartial. Gesundheit. Correct, Samach, you're right. That by din amamis, if the judge is already leaning towards one side, he's also not qualified. Very good. And here they're leaning towards saying Rosh Chodesh. They saw it, we don't care. Okay, very good. Next Mishnah. Kol hashrifaris kishedim. All shofars are kosher. Again, the Ramban is the one that speaks about, does this include non-kosher animals? Does it not include non-kosher animals? There's so much over here. And then many achronim ask on the Ramban, guys, we learned in Chulin that one of the simanim of a kosher animal is that they have horns. So what's even the topic? So it's not so simple that there are certain scenarios where you have a non-kosher animal and it has a horn, and whether that's good or not, that's a big machlokes. Another very important statement that we're going to learn, we should get there, we'll get there with the help of God. Today on Chavav Amid Beis, we're going to learn a new Mishnah. And the Mishnah certainly is going to narrow down the shofars that we are going to use either to a ram or to a goat. And there's going to be a problem on how to put these two Mishnayos in together. One approach here is that our Mishnah is speaking about Mido Eiraisa. And then what we're going to learn on Amid Beis is there a rabbinic preference? But Mido Eiraisa, all shofars are good, aside of one. Chutz mishal para. Farvas, because the Torah calls it a keren. Look inside the second Rashi in the Mishnah. Einoi karo shofar. The Torah, as we'll see, it's only called in Scripture, it's called a horn. So who cares? So I want you to know that in Rosh Hashana, we don't have the word shofar. The Torah uses the word shofar by Yom Kippur. Let's read inside the Rashi. Regarding the blowing of the shofar on Yom Kippur, that's only on the Beis Din, on the Sanhedrin, only Yerushalayim, only when Yovel is noyeg. It says V'ha avarta Parshas Bahar shofar teruah shofar. And in the Gemara Perek Basra here in Rosh Hashana, in the last chapter in the Flamed Daled, we're going to have a Gzeira Shava Rosh Hashana to Yovel. That's the link. So just like God uses the word shofar by Yovel, therefore, the word shofar is imposed on Rosh Hashana, and according to the Tanach, to the Chachamim, the Torah doesn't call the horn of the para species as a shofar. It's called a horn. However, Amar Rabbi Yossi, no. If that's where you're going, halay kol ha-shofar is nikra'u keren. Why? He gives an example in Yeshua. The pasuk there is speaking about the pasuk means v'hoyu b'meshoich b'keren hayovel. It says over there kishamachem es koil ha-shofar. You have to see the whole pasuk. Now the word yovel or yuval here means a ram. How do we know that yuval means a ram? Just going back to the intro. Two big topics will be in kateged nasa saneged. That's chavav. And the other topic will be many semantic words. What do words mean? The word yuval here means a ram. So the Torah is referring to the horn of a ram, which is, by the way, what we use. And the Torah uses the words keren. If the word keren disqualifies, so then nothing should be qualified. So Rabbi Yossi is even more liberal. Any horn, any keren, any shofar, even of the cow could be used. Okay, says the Gemara, hold on. Shaper Kamal Rabbi Yossi, Takatzapasik in Yeshua. Answers the Gemara, no. V'Rabbanon kol hashrifaris ikru shofar v'ikru keren. You're right. You will find in Scripture the word keren in reference to the ram, in reference to the yael. True, but you will also find the word shofar being used for their horns. By the cow species, by the cow, by the ox, by the bull. No, the part only keren ikra. Never will you find the word shofar. That's why the Chachamim argue with the Tanach, with Rabbi Yossi. For example, the Chsiv, these are the words said by Moshe Rabbeinu regarding the bracha he gave to Yosef Atzadik, that b'chor shoyroi, a firstborn, his ox, hadar loi, right? Glory is his. V'karnei re'em karnov, and his horns are like the keren of a re'em. We have chazals what the re'em is, but the point is that when it comes to the shoir, the Torah is referring to the horn only b'lashon keren. So hold on, Rabbi Yossi Yarmalach. No. I have a different source. The Paranami Yikra I found once in Tehillim. Now, as you'll see, it's not clear. What does it say? Tehillim Samachtes V'sitav Lashem Mishoir Par, right? Makar Mafres. That the David HaMelech is speaking about how Hashem loves his songs, right? That his songs are more pleasing to Hashem Mishoir Par. Now, just to know the semantics, that the word shoir is an ox. The word pod is a bull, same species. He could have says v'sitav l'Hashem mishoir. In other words, my singing to Hashem is more pleasing than a carbon that's coming from a shoir. So im shoir lama par, the im par lama shoir. Why did we have to give both names? So Taiches Rabbi Yossi Ella my shoir par shoifar. Beautiful. That's an emes fakir that you can use the horn of a para. Of a par of a shoir is also called a shweifer. He says, yeah, it's superfluous, but it's to tell you something else. Rav Masna, my shoir par, that David HaMelech's songs to Hashem were greater than our carbon. He was referring specifically to the carbon that Adam HaRishon brought. And the animal that Adam HaRishon brought as a carbon was the animal on the day that it was created. We know that the word par is used only when you are in the third year. It's a fully grown animal. The shoir that Adam HaRishon brought was already like a par. And that's the whole sugya that we also had in Rosh Hashana, that God created the world fully matured. The animals were not babies. What came first, the chicken or the egg? It was the chickens. It was fully formed. Very good. So that's the machlokes how to teach the pasuk. Now we have a Mishnah. In the Mishnah, it's clear. Why are they arguing? Because the Tanach says, because it's called a keren. We're going to have now two Amoraim that they will add another reason to the Chachamim, to the Tanach. Another reason. Ula Amar Hainu Tamad Rabbanan, that we disqualify a cow's horn. Kid Rab Chizda, the Amar Rab Chizda. The Pneima Ein Kohen Gadol Nichnas B'Big Day Zov Lefnai V'Lefnim LaAved Avoda. Right, the whole Yuma that we were learning, how he has to take off the Big Day Zahav, which are including in the 8 garments. You had certain garments that had golden threads. And whenever the Kohen Gadol went into the Holy of Holies, Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, like before and after the mikvah, he would put on uniquely linen, white clothing. What would be wrong for the Kohen Gadol wearing his big day zahav? And the answer is Lefi she'ein kateger nasar saneger, because the accuser cannot become himself the defender. By the way, when the accuser becomes the defender, that's the ultimate hisabcha. That will be amazing. But in other words, since the sin for which we all need atonement from is the egel hazahav, so let's first focus on the hazahav that Aaron, with all of the explanations, was involved in the making of the egel hazahav. So we don't want to have Aaron nor any of his descendants coming into lefnai v'lefnim wearing zahav. So let's focus on the egel. Egel is from the species of a par, of a para, of a shoir, right? It's cattle. So how are you going to blow the shofar on Rosh Hashana using a horn from an animal that also was the cause of our downfall with the egel hazav? Says the Gemara Veloy. What do you mean? No, anything connected to the egel or the zav cannot be used in bringing us atonement. What about the dam par? And by the way, the dam par was sprinkled. We learned, right? We learned Yuma all the way lefnai v'lefnim. It was brought on top of the kapayis. It wasn't on top. It was in front. The dam of the par doesn't count. The sin was with the calf. This is already the blood of a bull. It doesn't look the same. It's changed. Hold on. But let's go back to the gold now. The Kohen Gadol cannot enter Lefnai V'Lefnim the big days of because Ein Katega Nasa Saneged. What about the Aron itself, the Kapaitis itself, the Keruv? They were made out of gold. So the Gemara says, well, they were fixed there. They were not being brought in to achieve atonement. When do we have a problem with gold? Every detail. The one who sinned with gold may not approach and enter into the Holy of Holies while he's wearing gold. Something that's already in there affixed, that's not a problem. The Gemara is not happy. Hold on. It's true, he did not wear big day zav, but from the Ketaitas, you remember there was the ladle, we had the kaf, we had the machta, gold. He went in there holding a golden keli. So the Gemara counters, that's not a problem because even though he was using a golden utensil, he was not adorned with, he was not wearing. You become united with your garments. You don't become united with your kelim. A beged is different. You identify with your beged more. It becomes one with you. Big days of me bachutz. Well, he wore, the Kohen Gadol wore from the Shmonim Begadim, there was a lot of gold in it. So here again, if you're not going into the Holy of Holies, we're not that concerned, and there's no problem with gold. So now comes the bomb question. Where do we blow the shofar? Where do we blow the shofar? Even in the Beis HaMikdash, no one blew the shofar l'fnai v'l'fnim. Shofar nami mibachutzu. So answers the Gemara, listen to these words, that since the purpose or one of the purposes, as we have from Rav Sadia Goyen, the 10 reasons behind shofar, that it's the lizikaron hu, it's to effect by God, so to say, a favorable remembrance. That is mamish like kibifnim dami. What a gewaldige statement. When we blow the shofar on Rosh Hashana, we are entering l'fnai v'l'fnim. It's the same thing, this. So you can't use, again, it's not the gold, it's the egel. The mama from the egel is upon it. Now we learned the Mishnah. The Chachamim said why they do not allow us to use shalpara, because they said mepnei shehu keren. Comes along Ula mit Absanaya reason. Fragt die Gemara v'hatana mepnei shehu keren ka'amar. The Tana gave a reason, and the answer is that Rabbeinu HaKadosh was mekatzer the Mishnayos in a lot more than what he wrote is here. He was maramis to it. There's many layers to it. Doesn't bother us if Rebbe didn't write that reason. Not only that, Ula's reason was not the secondary reason. Ula's reason was the main reason. Rebbe wrote the secondary reason. Chada v'oid ka'amar. And look at the chada. Chada is not only the first, it's the first in importance. Chada, the ein, kateger, nasa saneger. And v'oid mepnei shehu keren. But now we have to explain Rabbi Yossi, because the Gemara above explained the pasuk from Tehillim, V'sitav Lashem mishoir par shoifar. In other words, we have his rebuttal for that which the Mishnah wrote. Now we have to have his rebuttal for Ula's gilui, that there's really a first reason. That Rabbi Yossi Yarmalach, regarding that which you say, that the ein kartegen nasa saneger, I will respond to that hanamila b'fnim. When you're going to the Holy of Holies, you can't enter with gold, and therefore you would not be allowed to enter with the shofar of a para if there would have been such an avodah. But the high shofar, since the mitzvah of serving God with the shofar, on Rosh Hashana and on Yom Kippur Yovel and on the fast days is always mi bachot. It's not inside the Holy of Holies, so I gotta have no problem with that. Now, regarding your secondary reason, so I tell you, kol hashofros. Oh, that's the words of Rabbi Yossi in the Mishnah, that if the keren will be a disqualifier, so then the Yuval from Yeshua, the ram, is also called a keren. Abaya, similar to Ula, had a Kabbalah, he had a tradition that there's another reason behind the Chachamim. Not only another reason, the main reason. Abaya Amar, Hainu Tamayu de Rabbanim. You know why we don't allow a shofar of a para to be used? Because the Torah uses in Yom Kippur the singular expression of a shofar. And from that we extrapolate not 2 or 3. Meaning, the way God makes the horn of a para grow, it's composed of individual shells. In other words, when it comes to the horn of a ram, when it comes to the horn of a yael, there, even though it grows from year to year, but the additional growth does not appear to be another layer. it looks like one unit. Here, the way, we have pictures. That, in other words, even though that you have a picture, not the way I'm saying, but it doesn't. We don't care about the picture. When it comes to the horn of the ram, which was the picture we had on the screen, when you look at the shayf, it looks like one thing. The bumps are just bumps, but it doesn't look like another layer. You have to know what you're looking at. By the cow, by the ox, by the bull, you see every year. It's like the rings in the tree. So it looks like it's layered. It looks like Yishnayim v'shloisha shayfers. Okay, now the question again. The Mishnah didn't mention that. V'ha tana mishum karen ka'amar. Abaya, like Ula, knew that really Rabbeinu HaKadosh here did not even write the main reason. Chada v'oid ka'amar. Chada, the shayfer echad amanachmana v'lo yishnayim v'shloisha shayfers. And ve'oid, that mepnei shehu keren. Oh, v'Rabbi Yossi Yer Malachai is the first medium-sized line. The ka'amrat, das was du sagst, that shayfer echad amanachmana. And therefore, v'lo yishnayim v'shloisha shayfers. I will rebut, I will counter that given the machabri ahadadi, since they are naturally attached to each other, I don't care that you can also see how they're separated. Rabbi Yossi says that fakerta, that's unity, different, that unite. Chadu, das is einit. Udeka amra, no echad yachid. I'm happy with echad. Udeka amrat, and that which you challenge with nature, who keren, kol ashayfris nami ikre keren. And now, Chevra, from here until the new Mishnah, which is a nice part of today's daf, we're going to go into different words, and we're going to see that there were times that certain words were unclear to the Chachamim. Either you find clarity in Scripture, or you find clarity in languages of the nations of the world, and all of the languages that are products of Lashon HaKodesh. So if a certain word means in a certain language a certain thing, that's it. Sometimes that's taka its original meaning in the Hebrew tongue. And if you see even the maidservants that work in the house of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, and they use a certain word for a certain meaning, they got it from the master, and that's another way of us knowing exactly what a word means. I just want to add one short nakuda, and just theoretically, that there is a beautiful minig by the Yemenites to use a, what they call, I think it's called a kudu. It's some sort of woodland antelope that they use for a shofar. I want you to know that Rambam, as we are beginning to unpackage the sugya, I know we're going to go into semantics, but we're coming back soon to the shofars, even though, again, kol ha-shofars ksherim, as we will learn, really the ideal shofar should be of a ram. Furthermore, l'shitas Rambam, if it's not from a ram on Rosh Hashana, you're not yoitza. So avad Yidin that have the Kabbalah, their tradition of using this groise kudu, then gesundheit. But if you don't have such a minig, then you should be medagdeg dafka not to be yoitze from a kudu shofar. Okay, let's go weiter. So the Mishnah quoted the pasuk that Rabbi Yossi brought from Yeshua. The Torah calls the shofar of an animal a keren. Now the Torah doesn't say bikeren ha-ayol. The Torah says bikeren ha-yuval. So the understanding of Rabbi Yossi is that yuval means a ram. How do you know? Right, the third in the third from the medium lines. My mashma the ha-yuval the dichra. Dichra is a ramish, even though the dichra means a zocher, but it means a ram. A ram is the species of what we call a shepsela, male in the second year or older. The Tanya, Amar Rabbi Akiva, I'll tell you how I know that when I went to Arabia, Araya, those Arabs, but that's Araya because their language, it all comes from Lashon HaKodesh. So you have to be a Rabbi Akiva, but certain words that you find in the Ummah Sa'elam, this came from the Holy Tongue. And that's how we clarify that the word Yuval in Yeshua Takamein Ram. Let's go further. When the first widest lines, when I went to a place called Galia, back in Golos, they would call a woman who's menstruating a nida, they would call her a galmuda. That's the word. And my galmuda, now you know that if you find throughout Chazal, galmuda is a main tanida. Where does the word galmuda come from? It's a composite. It means gemula, da. She is a gemula. She is separated from her husband. Rabbi Akiva traveled a lot. One of the reasons that he traveled is because This was during the time that he was spreading the word that Bar Kochba is Mashiach. And he went to notify the whole world. They would call a ma'ah. A ma'ah, we know now, is a small coin. It has the value of a sixth of a dinar. It was a very small coinage. That coin that they would call in Eretz Yisrael ma'ah, over there in Africa, they would call it a kesita. Everyone should know about that. What do we benefit from knowing that? The answer is you're learning Chumash to know how to type your pasuk. Right, when it says over there in Vayishlach that Yaakov purchased the area in Shechem, that's now Kever Yosef. So he bought it with Meya Kesita. That's written in the Torah. Kesita means a coin that's a sixth of the larger coin. Donkey means a sixth. Now you know what the meaning of the pasuk. You should know that many times giving smaller coins is to the benefit of the seller, because it's easier to use. I know by the Machpelah he gave Dafka the big shkolim. But here, Yaakov gave what was best for them. It wasn't just the sum total of the 100 of the sixth, but it's advantageous. Like you want you to give a person. It used to be that $100 was a lot of money, and people didn't work. You walk around with a $20 bill. Sometimes it's better for you to have a coinage that has less value, because that's the one that you use the most. Like I once went to one of the islands, and they would use. When a sale was done, they would use the word kira. And again, what was the Rebbe trying to explain? Leferusha, he wanted to teach a pasuk in Vayechi, where Yaakov Avinu was telling his children regarding the final plot that was left in the Ma'aras HaMachpelah, back to the Ma'aras HaMachpelah, because Esav's taina was that Yaakov already used up his chelik to bury Leah, and the one remaining belonged to Esav. Yaakov notified his children that the final plot in the Ma'aras HaMachpelah, I bought it, Asher Korisili. And we have the whole sugi, I think it was in Soita, that Taka Esav stopped the burial, and they sent Naphtali running back to get the document. But when it says Asher Korisili, that's the plot that I bought for myself. You know, the word Korisi means Mechira. It's a transaction of buying and selling. I went to Absa village, a place that's on the border of the city called Kan Nisharia. The word they were used for a kala is ninfe, and they were called a rooster sechvi. Lekala ninfe mikra. Here, where do we find that in a pasuk? It says Yefei noif misois kolaretz, a beautiful bride, which is the joy of all of the earth. This is really in referring to Yerushalayim. So Yerushalayim is, and the word is noif ninfe. Tarnagol is called the Sechvi, Amar Rav Yehuda, in the name of Rav. The Iboy Sema, the following comes to us through the great Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. That my crow, what's the meaning of the pasuk? Mishas batucha is chachma. These are Euvs, who placed in the smooth one's wisdom, as we'll see soon what this refers to, or who gave into the Sechvi understanding. What is the meaning of that? So Mishas batuchais chachma, that refers to the kidneys. The kidneys is a very smooth organ, and we have al pitayra soemes that the seat of chachma, the seat of wisdom, right? Kloyois yoy atzois comes from the kidneys, and there's a lot of meaning to that. So just to know that word, the batuchais, which means smooth ones, refers to the kidneys. Now we know what it means. That bina, that sechvi means a rooster. What's the chach? What's a rooster has the greatest bina? Bina is the koyach to differentiate. He knows exactly when the day really begins. He begins to make noise then. And Eov was just we're speaking about the greatness of God. That how does the sechvi know that? God put in the sechvi that level of bina. Weiter. Levi once visited Lahu Asra, and also Gabriel Kamei, and someone came to Levi and Amar Levi is here. Let me chapadin Torah. And he began to complain, and he says that Keva on Plania, so and so was kava me. What does it mean? He was kavad me. I was kavad by so and so. So Levi said, you know what? Let me think about this. And now he went to clarify what does the word mean. Now, why couldn't he clarify it from the person himself? We'll see in a moment. Second line. Also, Shalom Midrash. He came into the base Midrash and he asked him, someone is tithing that so and so kavad me. What does that mean? Amarle, that the word kava here means gazlan. And Amar Lach, Gazlan Amalach. And now you understand the meaning of the pasuk in Malachi. Hayikba Adam Elikim. Can a man rob God? That's what you see in scripture, that kava on yikba is miloshain gezela. So when they heard the story, Amalei Ravami from Baranish to Ravashi, I don't understand, Levi. If I would have been the Rav, Hassan, I would not have understood the word that he's saying, I wouldn't have asked him explicitly, but I would have started to interrogate him, and I would have all understood what he means. I would have asked this Jew, yeah, he covered you. How was he cover you? With what was he cover you? Why was he cover you? And once you start using that word from his answers, I would have figured it out. Why did Levi have to go to the base Midrash? So the Gemara explains why. That Levi thought that the word kavah is connected to a milsa de isura ka'amalei. It's connected to some sort of prohibited sexual relation. It would not be tsanua. Guy says, I was kavod. If it means that he did some sort of a halachically not appropriate sexual act with me, then what talking about it is not modest. So he delayed it in Torah, he clarified on the base Midrash, and now that he knows it means he robbed me, then he went back and he continued it in Torah. Weiter. Another case, there was a moment in history that a certain group of Chachamim did not know what the word Seirugin means. Rashi reminds us that we find the word Seirugin in Masechtas Megillah. The rule is that if you read the Megillah Seirugin, you fulfill your obligation. Sirugin, they didn't know what it means. So what happened? So here, Shamuhua la'amsa de Rebbe. They heard the talk of the maid servants in the house of Rabbeinu HaKadosh. And when they, the Chazinuhu, Rabbanan, the Ava Ailu, Piske, Rebbe is about to give a class. And the handheld, they saw how the Chachamim did not enter all at the right time. A group entered, and then intermittently, then another group entered, and it's self-understood. We had that story also, I have to remember where, that every time new students enter, you begin the class from the beginning. Where was that story? And there came a point where he didn't want to begin it, the teacher did not want to begin it from the beginning. So that's where we know that intermittently, Sirugin means they're coming in with a pause in between one and the other. And Amar Luhu, so the maid servants got upset at the Chachamim. They have the Recheretz for Rebbe. And these women told the Chachamim, Ad Masai Atam Nechlasim Seirugin. Now they saw Seirugin means with a pause in between. And Taka, that's the Mishnah, that if the Megillah is not read in one go, if you make a pause in the middle, as long as you're not going Lamafreya, you're good. Oh, another case. The word Cha Loigois. Where do we have that? So Rashi reminds us that in Yuma, when we speak about the foods that the Kohen Gadol should abstain from during a 7-day quarantine prior to Yom Kippur, making sure he's not tummy, also avoiding to the best of his ability of having a Tuma Hayoitze Megufay by a man that's having a seminal emission, so he doesn't eat foods that bring about a zera. And he doesn't eat garlic, so shum, we know what it means. And the Mishnah there writes, he doesn't eat chaloig loigois. They forgot, certain chachamim did not know what it means. But one day, Shamuola Amsa the Rebbe, they heard the maid servants in the household of Rebbe. The chazas lahu gavra, that they saw a person to come vadar parchine. Again, for us, we don't know this, we don't know anything. But parchine means purse land. It's some sort of herb. And they were witnessing how someone was scattering it too much. And they criticized them. Then they told him, why was paters to? Why are you scattering? Why are you wasting your chaloig loigecha? And they saw that that's the herb. Then they chop that's the meaning of the Mishnah, that you don't give the Kohen Gadol not shum, not cha loigois. It refers to this type of herb. Another case, what's the meaning of the pasuk in Mishlei, where he writes salsileha, that if you will salsel it, it will uplift you. This is in reference to learning Torah. Be misalsel it, and it's going to uplift you. They didn't know what that word means, or some of them forgot for a while. So Yom Echad, when they heard la'amsa the Beit Rebbe, they heard the maid servants in the household of Rebbe. The Havas Amra, that they were telling Lahu Gavra to a certain person. The Hava Kama Hapich B'Sa'arei. He was curling his hair. And they told him, enough with this, fixing up your hair. And they use the words misalsel. So now they realize misalsel means, there's learning Torah. You want to be uplifted by the Torah, you got to be misalsel. You got to delve into it. You got to turn it over. Remember, put together, ask questions. That's the misalsel.
Rabbi, how come all the stories are with the maid servants making
That's
this?
First of all, it's not all of them. Some of them came from the Africans and from who knows where, from the Arabias. But it means, it's gavaldik, that some things, what you like we're learning now in the Chumash, and Chazal tell us that Yafasi Chassan shall abda Yavais mitayras and shalbanim. It's very similar. That even the maid servants in the house of a tzaddik, from listening to the way they speak, you're going to learn Torah. Another pasuk. It says in Yeshaya that v'tei teisiha, God is saying that in the future I will take them b'matate hashmeid, with the matate of destruction. What does that mean? So Yom Echad shamhu ala amsa de Rebbe tahava omra lechaverta. One was telling her colleague that shekoile tatesa, take a tatesa, and they were taking a broom. Take that broom v'tate besa. Sweep out the house. The kind of remez that the tate should be a little bit helpful in the house. Epis, sweep the floor. But so that means that God is saying regarding, I don't know if it was the Babylonians or any one of the Shivim Ha'umais that made Sodis, that in the future God has as a special broom. It's called the broom of destruction, and God is going to sweep them out of history. And the final one, was meant in Nun Hey Tehillim, Hashleich, cast, throw, place on God, Yahavcha, put your Yahavcha on God, and God will sustain you. They didn't know what the word, they forgot what that word means. So Amar Abba Barat Chana, here we go for you, Kevin. Not everything was Amsa the Rebbe. Here we have, we're going back to the Arab. I was once traveling with an Arab, and I was schlepping my load, and I was going with him. And so the Arab tells me, Vashlepstu, Shekoil Yahavecha. So everyone used the words tuna for a pekel, for a load. This Arab used the words, take your load, Ushdei Agam Loyim, put it on my camel. My camel is going anyways. That's when it became clear to him that Yahavech means take your load, and instead of carrying it around, give it to God. Let go and let God. Weiter. Now
Yahavecha.
Thank you. Now,
which we know from the song, right?
Which I should have known from the song. Now, the next Mishnah, let's go. That even though we learned on Amud Aleph, even lechachamim, that they don't allow Mishal Para, but they say Kol Hashrifaros Keshedim. That is, let's go Midoraisa, but Midrabanan there is a rabbinic preference. That's one of the ways to learn this Mishnah. And the question now is, what's the rabbinic preference? I'm saying all this when they get to us, when it comes to actually fulfilling the mitzvah, that if it's not your misoida to listen to the kudu, dafka, don't do it. Because here are the ideal options, Schweifer shel Rosh Hashana says the Tanakama should be ideally shel Yoel. Yoel is some sort of wild goat, not a ram. And relative to the ram, it's pashut, it's straight. That's a great picture. No, it's not straight, but it's naturally not as bent as the shofar of a ram. And now the next line is only referring to the shofar that was in the Holy Temple. And we're going to learn more. We'll leave this for tomorrow, God willing. Upiv mitzupa zav, that there should be some sort of golden plating near its mouth. Oy gevalt, are we going to have problems with this? We learned about Ein Kateger Nasa Saneger. We'll have to speak out Balpev, the commentators speak about. We have the concept of a hefsek, right? We had in Sukkah Kol Shalahis Nois and a Chaitzes. Oh, there's a whole mountain to talk. We'll leave this for tomorrow. And in the Beis Hamikdash, when the shofar was blown, they also would have on both sides of the shofar blower trumpet blowers, chatzoitzrois blowers. And there was some gold connected to the shofar. And yes, in the temple, this goes even on Rosh Hashana. Two people that will blow the trumpets, one will stand on each side. They would begin blowing it together. Aber since mitzvahs hayoim b'shofar, the shofar was marich. Shofar Marach means that the shofar's soundings was longer than the sound of the Chatzotzros. That will be again tomorrow. Today, Kololoi Mishtama, you can hear two sounds together. We'll get into that. The Chatzotzros were Mekatzros. Now, why? Because even though we're going to learn more later that in the Beis Hamikdash they would add the trumpets, but still, since mitzvahs hayoim b'shofar, to make sure everyone hears only they hear the shofar, there had to be at least some part of the sounding alone and not with other sounds. In reverse, in fast days, we're supposed to blow the trumpets. In the Beis Hamikdash on the fast days, they would also at the same time use shofars. So the tiny is there, the shofar should be b'shol zechar. On a fast day, you want for the shofar to be from a ram, meaning it's naturally kafuf and it's more bent. The shofar that was used to blow, to make sounds on a fast day, upiyam and super kesef. Again, this is in the Beis Hamikdash, but they would have a silver, some sort of plating near the mouth. And ushtei chatzotzros be'emsa, but again, he was punkfaket. The Torah says chatzotzros b'lashon rabim. So you would have two trumpeters, and then on each side there would be a shofar blower. And here shofar was mekatzed, the chatzotzros were marichos on a fast day, because over there the mitzvah, the main mitzvah, utakatem b'chatzotzros. We're going to learn the psukim later. Next in the Mishnah, Shava Hayovel Rosh Hashana. This Tana holds that there is a Gzeira Shava that compares the mitzvah of blowing shofar in the Sanhedrin on Yom Kippur, on Yovel, to the obligation on every person to hear the soundings of the shofar every Rosh Hashana. And because of that Gzeira Shava, we have the following comparison. Number one, according to the Tanach, on Rosh Hashana, we want for the shofar to be straight. That's Litkiya. Shel Yoel. We don't pass in this way, but that's this Tana. And number two, we use the Gzeira Shava, Ula Brachos. The longest Musaf of the year is the Musaf of Rosh Hashana, because we actually don't have, like we have in every other Shabbos and Yom Tov, a 7 Bracha Shmona Esrei. We have a 9 Bracha Shmona Esrei. And with all of the psukim that we quote, L'malchias, L'zachronos, U'L'Shofros, exactly that Musaf is davened on Yom Kippur of Yovel. Imagine. So if you think that the davening ended late on Yom Kippur by you in the shul, shtel zechvar over there, how davening would take, because the whole Musaf of Yom Kippur was much longer. I'm sure.
Rabbi, what other Taniyos and Beis Hamikdash were there other than Yom Kippur?
Oh, so very good. So we're going to learn this, God willing, in the next Masechta. The fast days tzvika is not the fixed fast days that we have over here. and because tzvika is really asking, during the times of the Beis Hamikdash, we just had this in Rosh Hashana, that Tisha B'Av and all of the other times, they were made into a Yom Tov already. They were a Yom Tov. But anytime there was a tzara shaloi tavoi, if people understood this is a communal tzara, our reaction was by making an introspection. What's my part in this? How can I better my ways? Which would include a fast day, which would include the blowings of Chatzotzros, even Bisman Beis Hamikdash. Okay, back in the Mishnah. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no, but Rosh Hashana, Toiken B'Shol Zecharim. No. On Rosh Hashana, you would use the ram, which is a curved kfufin. He doesn't hold of the Gzeira Shava, but he says ubi yoivlois. But take in Yovel was only in the base in Sanhedrin. The shofar that's blown on Yom Kippur and Yovel, there it's Bishel Ye'elim. There you have the wild goats, which are relatively called straight horns. Let's hop on as much as we could. Says the Gemara Levi. Now it's amazing. You have two Tanaim. Levi doesn't paskin fully like either of them. I'm a Levi. I want you to know that mitzvah, Sai of Rosh Hashana and Sai of Yom Kippur, both of them ideally use it from a ram, which is kfufin. However, Shel Kol Hashana, which means fast days, by fast days, pshutin. So the Gemara says, hold on. Our Tanakama says, Vatnan Schweifer, Rosh Hashana v'shel Yoel Pashut. How can you, Levi, disagree? So the answer is, Hu Amar Kaitan. Oh, he will hold like, you're going to say right away like Rabbi Yehuda. Now, when you're quoting Rabbi Yehuda, why don't you can quote Rabbi Yehuda of our Mishnah? What's amazing is that the Gemara doesn't quote our Mishnah. We quote a Braisa. And I'll tell you why he quotes a Braisa. Because the Tanakama has no name. Yachid v'Rabbim, we pass him like the Rabbim. The Gemara is explaining why Levi chose Rabbi Yehuda. Because when the Braisa quotes Rabbi Yehuda's words in the Braisa is not saying his opinion. He's sharing what everyone did. It's called Ma'aser Rav. But Rosh Hashana, hoyu toikin b'shel zecharim kefufin. And you see, in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda's words is not hoyu toikin. He says, you blow with. Here it's better, so to say. It's more powerful when it comes to how do I determine the halacha. Everyone blows shel zecharim kefufin, but u'beyovel shel ye'elim. But we're not focusing yet on Yovel, on Yom Kippur of the Yovel year. So 1 second, we're only focusing now on the first statement that the mitzvah of Rosh Hashana is kfufim. So why didn't he say Hilchas Rabbi Yehuda? So the Gemara right away says, of course not, because if he would have said Hilchas Rabbi Yehuda, then we would have thought that Levi is paskening fully like Rabbi Yehuda. Afilu shel Yovel nami ki Rabbi Yehuda svira lei kumash malon. No. That Levi, and here we're not even asking how do you do that? How do you mix and match? But Levi is paskening that other than for a fast day, you always use ideally you use a shofar of a ram. Now let's chaparayim. What is the underlying conceptual machlokas of our Mishnah of the Tanoim? Says the Gemara, Mar Sover, that's Rabbi Yehuda, that the avoid of Rosh Hashana is an avoid of bitul. But Rosh Hashana, kama the choyev inish, the more you are bottling yourself, the more you are bending, you're bowing yourself, then kama the choyev inish date, then kama tfei mal, and noch beser. But Yom Kippurim, there's an avoid of emunah pshuta. Emunah pshuta also that we're God's children, didan notzach, you have the avoid of bitul, that I'm unworthy. What mindset should you get into beikar? That's a beautiful machlokas. On Yom Kippur, the avoid is kama the pashat inish data tfei. Kama the pashat inish date. The more you have a straight mindset. We're speaking here, by the way, about Yom Kippur, freedom. Freedom, it comes from the yechidas coming out. Yechida straight is tfei mali. Marso Tanakama holds punkt fakir on Rosh Hashana kama the pashat inish date tfei mala. The avoid of Rosh Hashana is even deeper than Shuvah. The way we learn in Chassidus. The avoid of Rosh Hashana is we're being mamlich the melech. We're being mamlich the melech with our yechida connection. Who are we to be mamlich the melech? Emunah pshuta, straight. However, l'kula alma ubetainiyas, when it comes to a fast day, the avoid of a fast day is bittul, is introspection, is looking at not our deepest self, which is always completely pure and holy, but looking at our behavior and our amidas that have to be upgraded. Ubetainiyas, since kama the choyev inish date, the more a person, so to say, will bend his mind, will have bittul, then tfei male. So on a fast day, the concept of bent is also externalized by using the ram's horn, but beautiful. And here we have, again, now you appreciate the machlokes of and just maybe just the Beloshan Sachis, that the people who use the kudu, they have such gavaldik bittul, that like they're bottled, the very, very humble people. So they have this doubled over Schweifer, Chevre, a lot more to be continued. Bishmak. It's going to get an easy week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.